In today's video, you are going to learn a routine to help loosen up a stiff arm due to spasticity. If you've been around the last few weeks, you know we've been differentiating different types of stiffness. We've been talking about spasticity, contractures, and tightness. Now for contractures and tightness, kind of just a prolonged hold is a great way to kind of loosen up that type of muscle stiffness. But spasticity is a little bit different. It has kind of a movement component to it. I call that kind of like a velocity dependent component, where if you lengthen a muscle too quickly, the muscle will involuntarily contract. That's really how you differentiate spasticity from contractures. And so that being said, the way to mobilize or loosen up that type of a muscle stiffness is a little bit different than just kind of like a prolonged hold that you would do with either contractures or tightness. So that's what we're going to go over today. If you're new to this channel, I'm Tara, I'm a neurologic physical therapist, and on this channel we talk about anything and everything related to mobility, health, fitness, and mindset in the context of neurologic injury, with the end goal of empowering you with as many tools as possible to take ownership of your rehab and your health, to live an overall more active, more mobile, pain-free, happier, healthier life. Now, all that said, I hinted a little bit to what spasticity is, but let's go a little bit deeper. For those of you that didn't see the first video, although I highly recommend that you watch that video before watching this video, and I will put a link for the video where I go in depth on what spasticity is in the description below. But spasticity is velocity dependent, meaning that there's a component to it where when you lengthen a muscle, you get an involuntary contraction of that muscle. So if we're talking about the bicep, if you rapidly lengthen it, the response will be that it'll rapidly contract. That is spasticity. When you've had a stroke, it's very common that you have spasticity and tightness. The tightness, or the adaptive shortening of that muscle, or the loss of the elastic component of that muscle, is usually just due to the fact that the spasticity, that involuntary contraction, keeps the arm in a bent up position for prolonged periods of time during the day. And then because of that, the muscle will lose a little bit of that elastic component because it's not going through that normal lengthening throughout the day that our arm typically does when we're reaching for things. But if you have spasticity, there is a component to that. Because there's that component that is kind of dependent on the movement, the lengthening of that muscle, when we stretch a muscle that is spastic, the rationale is a little bit different. You don't want to do kind of just like a prolonged hold that you would do with just a muscle that straight up has tightness in it. You want a movement component to it today. So that's what we're going to go through. We're going to go through movements to help restore appropriate lengthening of a muscle and minimize that recoil or that reactive kind of contraction. So how do you do that? You go through movements where you're repetitively, smoothly, and slowly lengthening that muscle. We're going to do that for the bicep, and we're going to do that for the wrist. Now, the very important thing when it comes to the arm versus the leg, which is what I focused on last week, is that many of the muscles that become spastic are what we call two-joint muscles. So the bicep is a two-joint muscle, and what that means is you can block the arm in extension and you can work on shoulder movements, and you're going to be getting that component, right? You're going to be getting that rhythmic lengthening of that muscle, getting the muscle used to lengthening. Because we're blocking the elbow, we're kind of hopefully training it to not do that, do its action, which is elbow flexion. So we lengthen, or we block the elbow in extension, and we move the shoulder, and that way we are lengthening that bicep muscle, but we're putting a block on the main action of that muscle to try and kind of minimize or discourage the muscle from doing that involuntary contraction. Same with the wrist. If you block the wrist in extension, you can do some elbow movement, some lengthening here, and you are lengthening the forearm muscles, which part of those forearm muscles are the wrist flexors, which pull that hand down in like this, which many of you are familiar with because that's what your hand looks like. That is due to spasticity, and again, it's probably a combination of spasticity in those wrist flexors, but also tightness in those wrist flexors as well. So I hope all of that made sense, and then I hope when you see the exercises, you'll understand why some joints are blocked and why we're doing the movements that we're doing, and I will try and explain them as I'm doing the movements or the exercises as well. Now, if you're new to this channel, you might not know this, but we do have 2 membership programs. And as a member, you do get access to any PDF handouts that go along with the videos here on YouTube. This video does have a PDF handout that's going to have pictures and descriptions of all the exercises that we go through so that you can easily implement those into your home exercise routine without having to keep coming back and watching this video. To learn more about our membership programs and to sign up, you can visit rehab-hq.com. Now let's go ahead and dive into the exercises. All right, so for this exercise, what I have on here, it's probably not something a lot of you could get on your own. So this is really probably for for those of you that have helpers at home. But I have an air splint on. I love, love, love the air splint. I will put a link for this air splint in the description below. This is actually one that's designed for the leg. And the reason this one works is because in addition to this, I also have the wrist and hand blocked in extension. So you heard me give that lengthy explanation. For this one, what we are doing with that movement is we are kind of getting that bicep to lengthen and kind of get used to that lengthening without that recoil contraction. So that is the rationale behind blocking the elbow joint and performing this movement at the shoulder. I will put a link for a door anchor that will work very similarly to this in the description below. I will also put a link for these bigger straps. It's kind of like an ankle strap, but they're meant for the thigh, so they're a little bit longer. And then all you're going to do is have that resistance band. You want the hand kind of parallel to the ground if you can. And then you're just letting it relax and almost kind of float out to the side. Really rhythmic, trying not to let it jerk back in. Kind of getting it out towards the wall. This one also is another area where people have a tendency to have a little bit of spasticity are the muscles that internally rotate the arm and pull the arm inward this way, like the pec muscles. So it's also kind of working to kind of mobilize those muscles as well. Nice and smooth. All right, so here another one kind of for the front of the arm or the bicep area, kind of letting that band almost kind of whip the arm back just a little bit. If you have a shoulder subluxation, do not do this. You'll know you have a shoulder subluxation if you see a divot on the outside of your arm. You should not do anything like this if you have subluxation. That means the arm bone has partially fallen out of the socket, and this would not be good. But with this one, what I want you to focus on is kind of squeezing the muscles on the back as the band kind of almost a little bit kind of throws that arm backwards. Now, the thing I like about this is it is very similar to walking. So some of you do say that your arm draws up more when you walk, and some of that is because when your arm swings naturally, that naturally is going to cause that bicep to lengthen a little bit. So we're trying to get the muscles to kind of adapt to these movements. So it's not going to be super gentle on this one, but it is kind of similar to how it's going to feel when you're walking. So again, attaching a resistance band to a door anchor, having that arm blocked in extension again, kind of bringing the arm forward and then letting that band just kind of bring that arm back. All right, so this is an active assist technique. I do have the wrist blocked in extension, and the Pilates bar is kind of holding that bar in what we call supination. So what that's doing is it's already taking a little bit of slack out of those forearm muscles. And then what you're doing by straightening the elbow out is you're just kind of lengthening those forearm muscles a little bit more. Okay, so again, you're just getting used to lengthening this rhythmic motion. You want the muscles to be able to lengthen and not feel like they need to contract, especially that wrist. A lot of you know what I'm talking about, is anytime you try and move any part of the arm, that wrist kind of balls up in a fist. So we're kind of blocking that to discourage that from happening while training the muscle how to lengthen. And again, blocking that recoil contraction that usually happens in the wrist and the hand. This is the setup. Now, a lot of you guys have asked about this brace. It's something that I have made locally that usually is available to patients that I see in person. If this is something that you might be interested in, there is a form in the description below this video. Just fill that form out and someone will reach out to you with the steps to purchase one of these braces. Again, wrist blocked in extension and nice rhythmic lengthening. All right, and now for this one, I love this device. I've talked about it in quite a few videos recently, but there are so many ways that I use it. But this is something called the core stretch. It is used to stretch your back muscles. However, in addition to that, it's kind of on a pivot. So it's a perfect device or tool to rest your hand on using a blue strap. Again, blocking that wrist and extension, elongating the other muscles in the arm without getting that recoil or that involuntary contraction in the arm. Mobilization with movement. And you want that movement to be nice and rhythmic, trying not to get it to jerk in. If that's happening, just use your other hand to help guide it out. Your cue in your brain is relax, relax, relax. You want to allow that muscle to lengthen and not get that involuntary contraction. If this is your posture and you're trying to restore normal arm movement, it's just not going to cut it. And that is the reason for today's product spotlight, which is this very simple device called Not a Chair. All you do is place it behind your back, hook it in front of your knees, and instant improvement in posture. Now, why is this so important if you're someone who is recovering from a neurologic injury that has involved your arm? Well, two reasons. One, when you're in that rounded posture, there's only so far that your arm can go before bones just start kind of hitting into each other. And then the other reason is that there's something within our muscles called a length tension relationship. And basically that means muscles should be at like an optimal length in order for them to get the most efficient amount of tension out of them. And when you're rounded like that, a lot of the muscles around the shoulder that help to lift the arm aren't at their optimal length tension. And so this is a product I've actually been recommending to patients for probably over 10 years now. So when the opportunity came about for me to partner with this company, it was a no-brainer for me. So this device, basically, as I mentioned, it folds up into this little pouch right here. So when you're not using it, it stores pretty easily in this little pouch, and then when you're ready to use it, you just unzip it, place it behind your back, These straps adjust the length depending on your height. And then for those of you where your leg flops out to the side, my favorite feature is that these actually strap together, which keeps your knees in together. And then instant posture. Now, fun fact, I have been recommending this for patients quite a bit, but what I hear quite frequently is that caregivers also use it. It is really, really nice. It's way better than like the rolls that you put in your chair. If any of you have ever used those rolls, when you put those rolls in your chair, those kind of lumbar supports, what you end up doing is you just end up scooting forward in the chair and it doesn't actually do what it's supposed to do. But this, because of the counter force at the knees, that absolutely eliminates that. So you really do get that force at your low back to really keep that low back rounded, keeps your chest up nice and high, and is a game changer when it comes to sitting posture. So like most of the products that I do in these product reviews, we do receive a small commission when you click on the link in the description below. So if it is something you're interested in, you want to learn more about it and you want to support this channel, definitely click on that link in the description below. But yeah, this is the Not a Chair. But now let's go ahead and dive back into the video. All right, so first let me show you how this brace is actually intended, and then I'll show you how I use it in another way for that mobilization with movement. This piece, hand piece, kind of keeps the hand open and straight. Then you have this forearm piece, which hooks right on your forearm. And then to get a wrist stretch, so to use this for its intended purpose, which is to stretch those forearm muscles, you have these straps here and you just pull them as tight as you need to tighten that brace. Pull that wrist into extension as much as you can tolerate. Like that. Okay, so that is how it's designed to stretch the wrist or maintain that prolonged stretch. Remember, when it comes to the wrist and the forearm, a lot of times you have spasticity, which leads to tightness. So for the tightness component, you want to have that in a prolonged, you want it lengthened for a prolonged period of time to work on that tightness. But then you can undo these wrist straps so that the wrist bends. Take the forearm piece off. All right. And then basically just move that wrist. What you're doing is you're lengthening these forearm muscles in a nice rhythmic manner, which are part of the muscles that cause that hand to go into that clenched position. Okay. And then the other really, really important part to relax a spastic hand is to have the thumb abducted. So with this brace, you get nice abduction. Abduction means the thumb is out to the side away from the hand. Okay, and it's strapped in that position. And then you're just working on elongating those forearm muscles. Nice and rhythmic. Okay, so that's just a few ideas of things that you can do to work on the spastic component of some of the stiffness you might be feeling in your upper arm. I hope you guys found this video helpful. If you did, and you want to get more videos like this, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and turn on that notification bell so that you will get notified every time I upload new videos. Don't forget there is a PDF handout that goes along with this video that has pictures and descriptions of all of the exercises that we went through in today's video. To learn more about our membership programs or to sign up, you can visit rehab-hq.com. I enjoyed spending time with y'all today, and I'll see you in the next video. Have a good day.